Hello everyone. It's Amy Bolton here, Intuitive Wild Woman. I'm here today to share with you my Sacred Spirit Plant Healing series, starting today with day 1. I am very excited to share this with you. If you are watching the replay, I would love to hear from you. I would love to see your comments so I can react and share and answer any questions you have throughout. So if you're watching the replay, I would love to see that. Feel free to drop a comment below and so I can say hi and chat with you a bit. And yeah, so here I am. My name is Amy Bolton. I call myself the Intuitive Wild Woman. And here I am in the Dragon Eye tribe as the resident medicine woman. So I'm very excited to claim that title as I'm here sharing my story and all of the medicine that I've learned over the years with you all. So where am I going to start? So this is a big topic. This is really big. I was discussing it with Kara originally and she's like, Amy, this is huge. I'm like, yeah, it really is. It's so funny because I was looking through all of my books as I was preparing for this and I was creating each training, and I realized that so many of my books had plant spirit medicine in them. Whether it was just a paragraph here or there, but so many places reference this stuff, and it's such beautiful knowledge to have, and it's very sacred and very special, and needs to be treated with the most highest regard and respect. So what I wanted to start off with was acknowledging where we're all from. So right now I currently sit on the Shimshan territory in the Gitsan Nation, and I am originally from the Tahltan Nation. Up north is where I grew up, and I learned a lot from that. I've learned a lot from many Indigenous elders in Canada. So I live in northern British Columbia, Canada. And actually, Dr. Lee Joseph, she's wrote this book, and she was a huge catalyst in the start of my journey and awakening this ancient knowledge within me and this real curiosity and connection to plant spirit medicine. I did her plant foraging and local plant foraging identification course that she did in Dees Lake years and years ago, and it really sparked some curiosity, and it really opened up me looking at my journey as a child and how I was so curious about the plants and the details, the finer details. Like I was the one that was down on the grass looking at the plants and imagining the fairies and building the houses and connecting deeper with the plants and the real details of the plants, if that makes sense. And so this all started to make a lot of sense for me. And so I would love for you to share in the comments, whether you're watching the replay or whether you're watching me live. Where are you from? Do you know the Indigenous land you're on? If not, I encourage you to check it out and do a bit of research on it. Who were the first people that lived in that land, and what things did they do, and what plants did they utilize, and what plants were meaningful to them. I know in all of these books, whether it's Dr. Lee Joseph's book or even Asha Frost, this does not talk about plant spirit medicine, but it does talk about being respectful and finding your medicine, right? So me as a teacher, I'm not here to teach you how to do things a certain way. I'm here to invoke you to start discovering the way that your medicine is here to offer, or here to be offered to the earth or to the beings, right? Whether it be the human beings, the plants, the whatever it is, the animals. So this book is a really good book, and I wanted to touch on all of this first of all because I keep saying Dr. Lee, but Lee Joseph, she does have a doctor degree as well, and she's married to a doctor who is also named Lee, which is interesting because I know a couple couples that are like that. But she's been huge, and if you are interested in any beauty products, she has a whole beauty line. She was on Dragon's Den, and she does a lot of really beautiful work. So she is an Indigenous business. that I would love to see you supporting. Okay. So acknowledging the land that you're on. So if you can share, if you know that, if you don't know that, that's totally okay. Do the research and check it out. And like I say, the beginning of all these books, they start out with acknowledging that. And the beginning of my book that I'm writing also talks about that, and just really, really being aware of where you are and knowing the plants. So I talk a bit about this in my book that I'm writing and I'm working on currently publishing. Is when I started connecting to the plant spirits and hearing the energy that they had to share with me and the messages that they had to share with me, it became very, very clear that each plant had very different medicine and very different messages. And some of them were very protective, like, okay, stay away, don't come to these plants, they're not for you to pick, right? So this is when we start our foraging journey, or when we start working with spirit plant medicine, we really want to honor and respect the plants. So that's first and foremost. Make sure you do your research, and that is like the most key piece in the very beginning, making sure that we're not harvesting things that are sacred and ceremonial plants for the indigenous folk of the area, because a lot of this through colonization has been lost. A lot of this knowledge has been lost. So in a lot of Lee's work, she teaches this in indigenous communities to bring this knowledge back to the folks so that they can start working with the plants. And I know like this balm was made years ago by an indigenous folk up in the Tahltan territory. And then we made this stuff last year as well. So yeah, lots of fun, lots of good things you can do. And so the other thing that I wanted to start with is in here, in this book, there's a letter to white folk, particularly white women, in reminding us to find our own medicine, our own ancestry, our own connection. So if you know that, feel free to drop that in the comments, because this is so important that we're not, I'm drawing a blank to the word, that we're not taking teachings from other places and utilizing it as our own and making monetary compensation off of it without advocating. It's so, so important, because so many people, particularly I know all across the globe through colonization, it's been a huge thing, and it's really sad to watch. I know they are working on bringing back the language, bringing back the knowledge of plants and all that sort of stuff within these communities, but residential schools has destroyed a lot of that stuff. And one of my most dearest teachers and elders who taught me, she grew up in the residential school system, and she would never share a single awful story about it, although I'm sure she probably does have some. But you could really tell how indoctrination, and through her growing up through the school system, has taught her to just be this proper servant type person and serve who she's around. She taught me a lot. We picked a lot of different plants and did a lot of foraging, and it was interesting because she's in her 70s, this woman, and she lost all of her knowledge of these plants. And so after I had learned from Lee, I was working with this woman, the 70-year-old woman from the Casca Dene Nation, which is up near the Yukon border, right close to Alaska. Part of her family is actually from Alaska, part of her family is from Canada, but of course the borders and stuff, she's now Canadian. A Canadian woman. And I remember harvesting with her, and she was like, yeah, because there's a place in Whitehorse where if you collect medicines, and this is this woman here who wrote the Boreal Herbal, she has a shop and she will buy them off of you, and she creates medicine through that. So, and she talks about spirit plant medicine healing in her book as well. And so as I was working with this 70-year-old woman, and she's more, and I was like, we have to respect the plants and only take so much. And she was like, no. And it was interesting because I stopped for a moment and I was like, oh, she's lost a lot of these teachings. And it really, really hurt my heart to know how much of this information has been lost. So that's why I encourage you to support people like Lee Joseph and her beauty line, because she is working with Indigenous people in Canada to bring this knowledge back. And as I look at my books, I always talk about, thinking about the room that we're in and the people we're around, right? Who are we interacting with in our day-to-day life? Is it an echo chamber? Are we all the same people bouncing the same ideas back? Or are we, inviting diversity and different voices into our lives? So really, really think about that. I'm not going to read this letter out, but this letter is really, really good. I can post pictures of it in the group as well if you want to read more about the letter, but it's all about finding your own medicine and not taking things like dream catchers and very special sacred practices. So like on the back it says, root and ground into your own lineage and meet your ancestral guides. Practice self-care and rest on your journey and return to ancestral ways of cleansing and purifying. Trust and surrender so you can manifest and thrive. Release doubt, fear, and disconnection and insecurity. So it's all about your medicine, not taking from other people. So I think we've spoke enough on that, but it's very passionate to my heart, and I really wanted to start with that so that you guys are really aware that when we're doing this, it's about us and our spiritual journey, not about taking from other folks. Okay, so what is sacred? So I know Kara talks about setting intentions when we're creating something as sacred, and also respecting the plant. So when it comes to sacred spirit plant medicine, we are really respecting the plants. So that's why I want you to start with knowing the Indigenous lands you're on and knowing the plants. So we're not just going to go out and start gathering plants and having them around us just willy-nilly and whatever, right? We want to have intention behind it and what we're doing behind it. So yarrow is a plant that had been calling me for a long, long time, and it's funny, I share a bit about this in my book. Yarrow is a very spiritual plant that goes back to Egyptian temples, and it's been around on the planet for many, many thousands and thousands of years. And it was speaking to me quite a bit, and I have it everywhere. I have it in my car, I have it in my husband's truck, I have it on counters in my house, I have it on my altar, I drink it in tea. And it's a very special plant that called out to me when I was a little girl. I remember looking at it, and my dad was like, "That's stinkweed. That makes the cow's meats taste funny." So we don't want that plant. We want to get rid of it. And turns out it's a very, very medicinal, special plant. And so when we're connecting with plant spirits, quite often they'll come to you. There will be a plant that you're drawn to, and you won't really necessarily know why you're drawn to that plant or what is drawing you to the plant. But you can always do a bit of research. I always recommend starting with, 1 to maximum 3 plants per year, where we can really dive into the plants, and getting lots of books. So like I have Plants of Canada, the Plants of Northern British Columbia, Wildflowers of British Columbia, Herbs and Natural Supplements. This book has a lot in it. And then of course the Boreal Herbal. This is like my favorite book. This is the whole northern part of the globe, all the plants in the northern part of the hemisphere. So you might be in a different area, right? So you might have different plants. Some of these plants go all across the globe. And we can always look at the maps in there and see where some of these plants go, and some you will recognize. And one of the other thing is, if you really find a plant that you're connected to, you can always consider planting it in your garden or having it in your home, so that you're not taking it from places if it is a vulnerable species. The other thing is to think about whether the plant is like invasive or if it's super abundant. So things like dandelions, if you're connected to dandelions in a way, there's a way of harvesting them to reduce them from spreading and becoming an invasive species and going into the parks and taking away space for other native plants that need to be growing. And I was reading last night in Lee's book. I love Lee's book, actually. I've read it a few times. And I was reading in it last night about actually here in Tsimshan territory, along the river, they're doing some reconciliation of some basically permaculture. So the forests that the indigenous folk along that area, along the river, used to tend to the plants to keep them growing, right? You would trim certain plants and have certain medicine gardens, and then on the edges is where all the berries would grow and the roses and things. I have some rose petals here as well. I love rose petals, dried rose petals. I wish we had like smellogram here so you guys could smell, because it smells so good. I pick these every year, the rose petals, and then I pick rose hips in the fall. And Rose has been talking to me a lot, speaking of plant spirit medicine. And quite frankly, it's been a little bit intimidating, I guess is the word, for me to dive a little bit more. I've just felt really safe with my yarrow journey that I've been on, and it's provided a lot of protection. Now, Rose is offering, asking me to open my heart more, right? Karen and Mundo talk about this a lot, and asking me, it helps with your blood health, it helps cleanse, it is rich in vitamin C. And so I've been diving a bit more and more into Rose. It's been many, many years on these journeys with each of these plants. That's why I suggest you only start with 1, maximum 3 per year as you start diving into these things, because every year, every cycle, all these things are going to teach you new lessons, right? Okay. What are we doing? So I like to talk. We're 20 after here. If anybody has any questions or comments as we're going through, feel free to drop them, and let me know where you are watching from. I would love to know where you're watching from. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm seeing comments, if there are any comments, but that's totally okay. So as I said earlier, a lot of my books have touched on plant spirit medicine. So even in Womb Awakening, they talk about the moon cycles and the plants. And this book, that's not even about plant spirit, she talks about the moon cycles. And in the Anish, I'm probably not saying it correctly, so Eastern Canada, where the nation is that she's from, the First Nations groups, the moons are all based on different plants, which is so cool. So I was reading about this last night, and May, the moon that comes in May, the full moon, is the flower moon. And then I was going through my books. It was so fun. My journals, and I used to do bullet journals, and I haven't done it yet this year. And I was writing out the moons, and May is when all the flowers start coming, right? And the strawberry moon, the raspberry moon, the blackberry moon, the corn moon. So all the moons, and I talk a bit about this in my book, as well as the Tahltan Nation, where I grew up, and how each of the months were based on the types of weather, or the like thin ice on lake or thick ice on lake, based on what the month was. So over in Anishinaabe, over Chippewas Nation, First Nation, over on the eastern side of Canada, this is how they have passed the storytelling of the moons through the plants, right? So when the flowers were coming up, that was the flower moon. So you knew that's how you could keep track of the seasons and the years. And I talk a bit more about fireweed. Fireweed is grown in the Yukon, and you can see the different seasons of the years as well through that. So they talk about that Womb Awakening. She talks about it. It's just such an ancient technology, right? And seeds, if you get into gardening, seeds are often germinated through the new moon and the full moon. It's so magical and beautiful, and they take the maximum of intake of water at the full moon and new moon, which is so cool that there's such deep creative powers within this medicine of plants. Magdalene Mysteries talks about it, and the potions and ointments that are created from the plants. My book Earth Magic talks about it. They talk about a herbologist, Elian Cohen, talks about how the plant spirit medicine suggests that you can befriend a plant by getting to know it, and that plant alone can help you with healing. In other words, as a healer, you can invoke the spirit of the plant without your client necessarily having to even ingest the plant. So just thinking of the plant and visualizing the plant and being with the plant is so helpful. Yes, with my rose, I have drank in lots of rose hip tea, but even as the rose calls me, even just me sitting with the rose, taking pictures of the rose hips and connecting with it, it's asking me to open my heart. It's asking me to just relax and be with the rose, right? So this really, really goes into really, really deep intuition and really, really connecting. So like, if you ever have hugged a tree, right, and felt the energy of a tree, that's a plant spirit connection. You're connecting with the tree and you're having a moment with the tree and you're listening to the tree and you're grounding, you know, the roots are grounding you and you're connecting. This is what plant spirit medicine really is. It's really the energy around the plants. So when I'm out harvesting, we always ask the plants for guidance. And my daughters had the opportunity and privilege to do out on the land training when we lived in Dees Lake with some local Indigenous folk in the area. And it was very, very powerful because my kids often remind me when we're out in the forest, Mom, make sure you thank the plants. Because I can get a little hasty. I can get a little excited when I find a real good crop of whatever. And remember, Mom, we have to thank the plants. Yes, 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 we do. And I didn't mention this in the beginning, but while I'm here teaching you, I am always a learner as well. So I'm open to learning from my kids. I'm open to learning from you all. I would love to hear your stories if you've ever had a connection with a plant or a plant's ever spoken to you in any way, because this is how we develop this. And I went on a earth magic journey for a whole year. So I've got the book. There's lots of information on earth magic out there. And these cards have been with me for many, many years. And they talk about different parts of the earth. And just different messages that the earth has to give us. I love these cards dearly. So I went on my earth magic journey for a whole year throughout all the seasons. And now I think this is so important when we're connecting with sacred spirit plant medicine, when we're connecting with different plants, is noticing them throughout the seasons, right? So what do they look like in the winter? What do they look like in the summer? What do they look like in the spring? What do they look like in the fall? This helps us to start identifying where things are and connecting with different spaces. I know since moving, I've moved, it's about a 6-hour drive south in British Columbia. So I was much closer to the Yukon border where I grew up. And now I'm more in central British Columbia. And I was looking, my book is called Lessons from the Cranberries. Because my earth magic journey while I was here started looking for cranberries. This is something that I used to do and I took for granted. In our backyard when we lived in Dees Lake, there was hillsides, south-facing slopes, just covered in cranberries. Like, I would make all my cranberry jelly for the whole year, my cranberry sauce from all the wild cranberries out there. And they're a low bush cranberry. They're actually, there's a different name for them, but I call them low bush cranberries. And then there's high bush cranberries. The high bush have the seeds in them, so you have to strain them out. I love the low bush because it was easy. I like to make things easy, right? So when I'm foraging, I pick the plants, I dry them out in baskets, and I put them in a jar. Done. If I want it for tea, I have it for tea. If I want it for making into salves or balms or things like this, then I have it, right? And I can do that at a later time when I have time and energy. I try to make this as easy as possible. So I used to have all this cranberries. And so last year before, when we were here, I was searching for cranberries and I could not find them. And my husband was so patient with me, and we went out and we continued searching for the cranberries. And he had asked a few of his friends locally who, you know, do a lot of mushroom picking and foraging in the area, and they'd kind of given him suggestions, but we weren't too sure. And one day we came across this space next to the river. And I remember standing there and connecting with the trees in silence and just really listening. And I found cranberries. Well, not the berries, but the bushes. The little, they're very low. They're right close to the mossy ground. And I was listening and I'm like, what is going on? Why can I not find berries? And I could sense, I had this knowing, this voice inside me that's, there's been over harvesting because people had been driving quads. Like there was trails all over through the forest, tracks just carved through the mud and through the moss. And they would cut off the berries from each other so they couldn't flourish more. And I was like, oh. And it was a real deep lesson for me in that moment to really understand how over-harvesting will impact a species of plant, especially such a fragile species of plant, such as cranberries. They're very fragile. And I was not aware of this until this moment in time. And when the plant started speaking to me through this plant spirit medicine that I was receiving by just being present. And it's basically like meditating with a plant, I guess, if you can put it in simpler terms. And I remember sitting there and okay. And this is where my book idea started coming. I remember I was doing a hike with a dear friend who was really open and spiritually connected, and I felt safe sharing my gifts and stuff with her, and that's when I knew my book was going to be called Lessons from the Cranberries. And so I have many stories about this that I share with my book, in my book, about all the different plants and all the different medicines that I've learned from over the years as I've connected with these plants. And they're all so fun and so different. Like my husband laughs at me because I'll look out my window out in the kitchen and there's a lot of poplar trees, and poplar trees are so much fun. They have a really fun energy. I don't know how to describe it. And so I connect with the poplar trees quite a bit, or talk to them, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know the language for this, but it's this plant spirit connection. And he always thinks it's so funny, like, oh, are you talking to the trees again? But I love it. There's so much medicine, and like I said, it's been lost, right? As colonization has happened and we've lost our connection with our ancestry, we've lost our connection with our roots and where we're from. And even the Indigenous folk here in Canada and across, the US and all over Australia, even in Africa, all the Indigenous folk there's this colonization and this taking of this land has been really sad in losing this knowledge. But the plants are speaking to us. They really are speaking to us. So that's where we have to have such reverence and respect and regard for these plants and these medicines. Okay, I'm just going to bring up make sure that I've kind of covered everything here that I wanted to talk to. So I encourage you, if you have a pen and paper and you want to get it out, to write down a plant. If you can think of a plant that has spoke to you or that you're drawn to, whether it be roses are everywhere, yarrow, or I don't know what plants you have around where you are, but which plant is speaking to you. And write that down, and you can sit there and close your eyes and visualize, what does this plant feel like to you? And like I said, you can take that spirit, that energy, and you can just visualize it. So last week my back was really bugging me. I didn't bring all my plants up, all my dried plants up here, but I have arnica oil downstairs, and arnica is a special plant. I talk about it in my book as well, but arnica grows wild where I grew up, and it is a plant that is grown for medicinal purposes. So that's the other statistic. Around 1 in 4 of all prescription drugs dispensed in by Western pharmacists are likely to contain ingredients derived from plants. So arnica oil, which is a pain reliever, is a plant, and it grows wild. It's a very fragile plant, so you don't want to pick it because it needs the root foundation. It needs the plant to keep going. But it's a very special plant. So if there's a plant that you know of that you can connect to, write down what that plant feels to you. What does that plant mean to you? What does it bring up for you? What does it invoke for you? And then I encourage you to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that plant. And if you can get it, you know, in front of you, if you have it. I know it's winter time right now. If you can go to a herbal shop and get it with you, that's cool too. If not, like I say, just looking at pictures and imagining it, and journaling about this plant is plenty enough. So, let's see, where am I here? Does anybody have any questions? I don't know, I haven't seen any comments, but if you guys can comment just to let me see if I can see comments. I know sometimes this changes and I don't always see things. And let me know if this is making sense. I see you guys watching. So, yeah, I would like you to take a plant and identify it and begin your relationship with that plant. Start developing a bond with that plant and recognizing its messages. Even if you have plant books at home and you want to look through that and connect with them. Okay. I'm wondering if you guys are leaving comments and I'm just not seeing them. I can add a comment. Oh, yeah, I can add a comment. Okay, good. Let's see. What else? That's basically the basis of plant spirit, sacred plant spirit medicine. I have all these books, so many books, and more downstairs. I have multiple of these books, which is super cool too. This is my favorite one. So if you are in the Boreal Forest, I encourage you to get this book, The Boreal Herbal. It's really good. She does lots of good trainings as well. Okay. Excuse me. So having that energetic exchange, I guess that's the way to describe it, right? Having an energetic exchange with the plant. And then we always offer something back to the plant, right? So a simple thank you can be enough. Traditionally it was tobacco, quite often, or even just taking some of your hair and giving it back to the earth and the plant is enough, you know, dropping that is beautiful. When I was on my earth magic journey, and I was, which I will continue to be on for the rest of my life. It's been a lifelong journey. But when I was intentionally on my earth magic journey, I would take my coffee, I'd go on a walk. And at the end of my coffee, because it's winter and cold and freezing outside quite often, I would take my coffee after it'd gone cold and I would intentionally give it back to the plants and say, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And giving that energy back. And just my leftover coffee or my tea, whatever it was, my tea bag or my tea leaves. And I would give it back to the plant. So you can be creative with that. But like they say, the prayer is the most important, from the Gwich'in elder who shares with this lady who's written this book. Okay, and my other thing for you to do as well is, if you missed the beginning, if you didn't hear me talk about this, is to figure out which indigenous lands that you're on and acknowledge that and get a deeper connection to that, so that you can tell which plants are more sacred to those people, or what are more wild and weeds, right? So I love working with yarrow because it's a weed. It grows everywhere. It's not endangered by any means. Plantain is another one. It's not endangered by any means. And the funny thing is plantain, the other name for plantain, which is such a powerful healing plant, is white man's foot, because it's wherever the soil's disrupted. So this has been a part of my earth magic journey as well, is noticing where they've disrupted the soil, where they've completely brought it all up for construction or whatever's going on. The most powerful healing plants come to surface right off the bat. And it's been so interesting as I've been learning more and more about gardening, is the more we till, the more we destroy the surface, the more weeds come up. So the best way when you're gardening is to chop and drop. It's a permaculture term, and permaculture, as I'm learning more and more about it, is an indigenous concept, right? Even the squash, corn, beans combo was originally North American First Nations humans who had learned how to garden that way, right? So we've learned a lot of our survival skills from those people. We need to really, really acknowledge that and honor that wherever we are. I talked a little bit about the food forest that is here in the area. I remember when we bought this property here, I had bought our neighbor I'd met our neighbor who just lives down the way at the very end of the road here. And apparently he was scared that whoever had bought this property was going to plow down all the trees and get rid of them. And when I'd heard that, I was like, no. There's no way this girl is going to be cutting trees down unless they're dead and they're going in our fireplace, because we're cleaning up the forest to create more new space and life and have a bit of a fire break, right? Yeah, the more dead wood that's in the forest, the more risk of fires coming through, right? Okay. I feel like I've rambled quite a bit for today. I would love to know if you have any questions or if this is making sense. I see my comment, but I don't see any of your guys' comments. So in this book, she talks about plants as energetic beings with perception and intelligence and awareness. And this is more and more becoming science, right? Like you hear the studies where plants respond to music and the energy that you have. It's so interesting because I remember growing up, my mom always had artificial plants, and it's kind of funny. She could never keep plants alive, but she was also a very busy nurse and a very busy mom, and didn't really slow down and take the time to connect with the plants. And she just had this belief that she just couldn't keep anything alive. But plants do respond to our energy and the music we have, and science is teaching us this more and more. But this has been such ancient knowledge for many, many thousands and thousands and millions and billions of years, the interconnectedness of humans and plants. And yeah, Dr. Lee talks a lot about this. Like I said, this is a big topic, but the teachings from the plant, she has, her whole chapter is all on it. And this is a really cool picture of the rose hip cycle. I was talking about this a bit earlier, and how the rose changes, right? So when you're on your earth magic journey, or when you're out there in the different seasons and the different times of year, the plant's going to look different depending on where it is in its cycle. And one thing with rose hips, if you are going to eat the fruit, we can't eat the seeds on the inside. They will cause upset tummies and what they call itchy bum. So make sure you clean all the little, and it's the little hairs that are on the seeds. It's not necessarily just the seeds. So I've tried a few different ways, but I find that by cutting them out and removing the seeds while they're still soft is helpful. Although sometimes, like I say, I don't have the time to do that. So I just let them dry and then I can do it later. You can try it in a blender. I have tried that method before. But the main thing is getting all those little hairs out. Yes. So she talks about that. These guys talk about things. And yeah, hugging a tree. I talked about hugging a tree. If you've never done it, I encourage you to go do it. It's the perfect time of year to just go hug trees, because I know there's not a lot of plants growing. So like, leave it to Amy to start a sacred plant healing journey course in the middle of winter when it's really cold out. But it's interesting because Indigenous people lived off these lands for many, many years, whether it was winter or whether it was summer, right? So during the winter is when they would be harvesting the tree bark and the inside of the bark, because it's rich in vitamins and minerals that you need. And during the summer is when you're doing a lot of harvesting and drying and preserving things, essentially, so that you can have teas and you can have the vitamin C. And there's still lots of rose hips available right now. Even if they're frozen, they're naturally preserved, which is a beautiful thing. And the insides of the fireweed are edible. There's so many edible things that are in the forest throughout the winter. And even when it comes to tree sap, pitch dripping off the tree, you've probably seen trees where the pitch just drips down. That is a very, very healing. It's like a natural ointment that you can put on cuts or scrapes or burns, and it's very, very powerful. Actually, Lee, who I've talked about a lot, I just love her dearly. Her husband, who's trained in Western medicine and is a doctor, he started getting people to use pitch on their wounds and stuff, and it was working way, way faster than many of the other Western medicines that we have nowadays. There's a quote in here: "The only real valuable thing is intuition," by Albert Einstein. Right? So this is a lot about intuition and connecting to your intuition. And it's interesting, guys, like, I call myself the intuitive wild woman. And claiming that title about 4 years ago was mostly so that I could start tapping into my own intuition and listening to my own intuition. And the more and more I did it, I realized everybody has this gift. We all have intuition, right? So we can all connect to these plants. And like I said as well, while I'm here to teach you and offer you advice and guidance, I would love to learn from you as well. So if there's messages that you hear from plants or messages that you connect with, I'd love to hear the stories. I love this stuff. So feel free to share that as you go on over the next month. Between now and our next Thursday, we'll be doing this the first Thursday of every month here in the Dragon Eye Tribe. I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear what plants you choose. If there's one coming up for you and you want to drop it in the comments, I'm hoping I see the comments. Somebody leave a comment just so I can see if it shows up. My test comment showed up, so I would love to hear what plants you are wanting to connect with. And I'm just going to pull a card because I love these cards. So if you guys are interested, I'll drop actually my link where I'm going to drop all the replays, and on my website you can get a card read too if you ever want to. There's a link for that. I'll drop my link where you can get on my list and connect more with I'm planning on putting some PDFs up there as well to accompany these trainings. And then I'll have all the replays there as well. So there, you can sign up there, and then, check out the other things on my website. But anyways, I'm going to pull a card while you guys are here, just to pull a card because I love these cards. And it's fun, and they're very, they're my babies. They're my favorites. Okay. Oh, Dragonfly Emergence. So the dragonfly is coming out, and this is so cool because as we're all just starting to learn, and the lotus is there in the bottom, and with the plants and the connection, as we're all learning about sacred plant healing, and emerging as new learners and new possibilities and what the plants have to teach us, right? It's all just coming up. Dragonflies are beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful animals. Okay. No questions, guys. If you don't have any questions, I'm probably going to close this up. I know I could ramble on and on and on. I used to call my Wild Woman Wednesdays my rambles towards greatness. And yeah, if you have any questions, I have all these books and I would love to share them with you if you have any questions about any of them. And next week we're going to talk more about power plants and connecting to your power plants. So I'd love you to come back and bring with you what plants you're finding you're connecting with, or where you've listened with your intuition and had a bit of meditation and connected with the plant and heard the messages. I would love to hear from you. If you choose to do that, if you don't, and you're just here just to kind of learn a little bit more, that's totally okay. Yeah, but feel free to sign up for my email list and sign up there and check out my website. I have all kinds of fun offers, and there's a free resource section with all kinds of fun things in there. Yeah, I think I've covered everything on my list. I will double check. I had a lot of fun getting ready for this, and yeah, and we talked a bit about why this work is sacred and it should always be done with the highest respect and regard. And yeah, and I would love to hear if you know which Indigenous lands you live on and that sort of thing, because that is so important. And what your ancestry is about, you know. I would love to hear more about your ancestry and where you connect with things. I know I'm on a journey to learn more about my ancestry, and I will likely probably do a DNA test one day, even though for some reason it's been scary for me. But I would like to know more and more about my ancestry. All I was ever told by my grandfather was, "You're Canadian, you're Canadian." And I'm like, clearly we're not Canadian, Grandpa. Like, yes, I was born here, but clearly this is not where my ancestry was from. So I do know a little bit, but I want to learn more. And I think this is so important, like I said in the beginning, like Asha Frost talks about, is connecting to your own medicine and your own ancestry and your own way of doing things. And then I know lots of Indigenous beaters and things here and advocates for missing and murdered women, and the residential school and all these things is, you know, purchasing their products to advocate and share the message and educate, right? That's why a big piece of this was a lot about that, because this knowledge has been stripped away from so many humans, and as we bring it back and as we learn more about it, we need to really honor and respect the humans who still do have that knowledge. And there's a meme going around about how some of the knowledge keepers are living on the streets or without homes or whatever the meme suggests. And I know it hits my heart dearly, because I do know lots of people who are struggling due to the colonial effects, and it's very challenging times. So as healers, I really, really ask you and ask everyone to be mindful of that and respectful of that. Okay, I'm going to close. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.